Well, it's finally here. It's game day. The Final Four national semifinals, 2 games tonight. And I'm going to get into my best bets for the Final Four. Before I do that, please, if you like this content, give us a thumbs up, comment on the video. It really helps us out. Subscribe to our channel if you like this content. We've got a full podcast we do weekly. I do gambling videos and picks and things like that. So all the support really helps us grow our channel and get more content out there. But let's jump into the game, and we're going to look to the Purdue NC State game. It's the first semifinal. It tips at 6:09 Eastern, 5:09 Central. And we're going to look at NC State's team total under 68.5, currently priced at -110. And so looking at this breakdown, in the 4 tournament games so far, NC State is 2-2 to this number in regulation. And I say in regulation because essentially they are 1-3 to this number in the tournament if you just look at the pure in-game scores. But the game against Oakland in the second round, the round of 32, they did not get to 68. They did not get over 68.5 in regulation, but they did when it got to overtime. They had 66 in regulation. And so essentially, assuming this game doesn't go to overtime, 2-2. The games that it did go over, we had the first round against Texas Tech, and that one was the highest scoring game NC State has had in this tournament. And the other one was the Elite Eight against Duke. And the reason I'll bring that one up is because that game was pretty much on pace to go under their team total and under the game total the entirety of the game. In the first half, there were 21 points scored by NC State. It took a 55-point second half for them to get into the 70s. And really, if you look at it, not only did they shoot an absurd percentage in the second half, but also they had 58 points with 3 minutes to go in the game. So they were right on the cusp of that number. And if they're not ahead by double digits at that point, they probably either don't go over or barely go over. But because they were up 10, Duke started pressing really early, and they made NC State make free throws and wide open layups. They scored 18 points in the final 3 minutes of the game to go over that number relatively easily. So again, surface 1-3 going over that number, but when you break it down, it's really 2-2 and very easily could have been 3-1 to the under. So then we look at Purdue in the tournament, and Purdue in this tournament has not given up more than 68.5. They've not given up 69 or more the entire tournament. Game 1 against Grambling State, they gave up 50. Grambling State averaged just under 68. Game 2 against Utah State, they gave up 67. Utah State averaged just under 80. Game 3 against Gonzaga, 68. Gonzaga averaged about 85. And Tennessee game 4 gave up 66. And Tennessee was averaging 80. So on average in this tournament, Purdue is holding opponents to lower 15.5 points lower than their season average. So they've done a phenomenal job defensively. NC State on the tournament, NC State on the season is averaging 76.5 points per game. So if you extrapolate that out, if they were to maintain the average and Purdue held NC State to 15 points shy of their season average, they would be short of the total that we need here to win the bet by about 7.5 points. And so even if you extrapolate it out and take the best performance by an offense compared to expectations, right? Utah State was about 12.5 points shy of what they averaged on the season. They scored 67. They averaged 79.5. So even if they score in that range, they're still going to go under by about 4.5 points. So based on what Purdue has looked like defensively, I like this number. That's number one. Number two, I also like that 2 of the teams that they played against that they held under this number already include a top 25 offensive team in Tennessee and a top 5 offensive team in Gonzaga. And, both of those teams are better offensively than NC State. NC State is in the 40s in offensive efficiency, and that has really risen based on the tournament. Regular season, even including the ACC tournament, they're closer to the 50s. They've shot up in the tournament, and rightfully so. They've played pretty good offensively. Then we take a look at the possessions in each game, which is a good thing to look at so we can have an idea of what type of, number of possessions are we going to be looking at in this game. Well, if you look at it, okay, in the games NC State has played against Texas Tech, 67 possessions, against Oakland in regulation, 60, Marquette 69, Duke 68. So Oakland was actually lower. It took the Oakland game overtime to get to that 68, 69 possession range. But each of the games has been right around that range. And then you look at Purdue. Purdue's average possessions on this tournament against Grambling, 61. Utah State, 73 possessions. That was the highest possession game they played. Gonzaga, 59. Tennessee, 67. Right? So if you're looking at it, Purdue's averaging 65 possessions a game. NC State's averaging 66. So they're right in the same realm. And I think that's a good indicator that we're going to be right in that 65 to 68 range, probably closer to that 65 range. If we're going to need that, if that's likely going to be the number of possessions for NC State to go over this number, they're going to need to average about 1.04 points per possession. Well, Purdue in the tournament has given up that number only 1 out of 3 games. In fact, they've only given up over 1 point possession once, and that was against the Zags. The Zags scored 1.15 points per possession, and they're a top 5 offense in the country. Again, remember, NC State is 40th. So we're going to need a team basically to play above expectation to go over this number. This is why I like this bet. The most similar team NC State played in comparison with Purdue was Duke, right? Kind of similar stylistically. Duke is eighth in offensive efficiency. They were 15th in defensive efficiency, and they played at a pace that is very slow, 253rd adjusted tempo. Purdue, second in offensive efficiency, so top 10 in offense, 17th in defense, top 20 in defense, and they're 205th in adjusted tempo. So very, very similar stylistically. Obviously, Edey is a totally different animal for Purdue. But I think just in terms of the way that game was played, it was played at a pretty slow pace until the end of the game. And it took some high-level shot making to even get that game in the 60s late in that game. It was on pace to go into the mid 50s in the first half. So you have that. Then you have a couple other factors I want to mention. Number one is the arena factor, right? This game is being played in a football stadium, 65,000 seat arena. I know it gets talked about a lot. It does matter to an extent, especially early in a game. I could very well see this game getting off to a very slow start. I thought about taking first half under in this. I don't think that's a bad bet either. I do think that odds makers have kind of adjusted on some of those first half unders. You have to pick your spots, but I could definitely see this being a low scoring game early. The difference and the reason that I kind of went with this one instead of the first half under is Purdue has the outlet of going to Edey in situations like that, right? If jump shots aren't falling, they can get inside and get to Edey, fouls pile up, and all of a sudden, you get closer to a number than you should have been. But I also want to mention a few more things from a matchup perspective and why I like this one. So you look at it, okay, from a rebounding perspective, Purdue should dominate the glass in this game, right? Purdue's 6th in the country in offensive rebound percentage. NC State is 181st in defensive rebounding percentage. What does that mean? It means lots of extra possessions for Purdue and more than likely longer possessions for Purdue, right? Offensive rebounds lead to a reset of the shot clock to 20 seconds. And now all of a sudden a 20-second possession turns into a 35-second possession, right? And if you have a team who's very elite at offensive rebounding going up against a team who doesn't rebound well on the defensive end, and you create 10 to 15 more chances, going to shorten the possessions of the game. That's going to hurt NC State getting to the number. Then you look at the other side. Purdue is top 15 in defensive rebounding percentage, 13th in the country. NC State, 191st in offensive rebounding percentage. What does that mean? NC State, very unlikely to create second chance opportunities, right? So again, now we have a tale of both sides. Purdue's probably going to generate more possessions, longer possessions. NC State has the ball less time. On the other end, NC State, very unlikely to generate a number of extra possessions and get easy buckets and second chance points. That's going to decrease their points per possession, right? And then the other thing that I like about it is Purdue, 7th in the country in opponent free throw rate. NC State, outside the top 100 and getting to the free throw line. So you have a team who's not going to generate extra possessions. They're going to give up extra possessions to the opponent, and they're not going to get to the free throw line very often. That is a recipe for a low points per possession. And if we're looking at a game that is going to be pretty predictable in terms of the number of possessions, right? Both teams play in the exact same range, right? 65 and 66 on average. And we know NC State has to score right about above a point per possession. That is a very helpful thing to look at to see, okay, we need to have this many points per possession, and they're not going to have the ability to get second chance points and get to the free throw line a lot. So they're going to need to be very, very efficient offensively, and we have a team who's 40th in offensive efficiency on the season. So I really, really like that. I also don't like the matchup for NC State in terms of just their offensive game plan, right? DJ Burns is the highest usage player on NC State, right? Over 28% of possessions he has used, and he only plays about 28 minutes per game. So he is a very, very high usage player for NC State. This is a terrible matchup for DJ Burns. I really like DJ Burns. He's had a phenomenal tournament, great story, fun to watch. But playing against Zach Edey is just going to completely negate him offensively. I would be shocked to see him score in double digits. And we've seen money professionally come in on his player prop total. I do not think we're going to see a lot of points from DJ Burns. I think he's going to also be working really hard on the defensive end to prevent Edey from catching deep. And I think that it's going to be really hard for NC State to generate offense at the rim with Edey inside. Again, this lends itself to a low efficiency game for NC State and a game that we have a predictable amount of possessions. What does that mean? In order to get to this number, NC State going to have to hit a large number of outside shots, jump shots, and specifically threes. And the problem is NC State has only 3 players above 33% from beyond the arc. One of them is DJ Horn. He's their best three-point shooter. He's going to have Lance Jones draped over him all night long, who is Purdue's best defender. I just really, really dislike this matchup for NC State. Great story. Could they pull the upset? It's possible, right? But there's a reason this line is 9, which actually is short. And, just looking at how this plays out, you also have the fact the magnitude of this game probably going to lend itself to some nerves early. We already talked about the arena. I like NC State's team total under 68.5. I thought about going first half under. I thought about laying the points with Purdue if it got as low as 8.5 or 8. It's trended back up towards 9. But overall, this is my best and favorite bet of the first semifinal between Purdue and NC State. I hope you like this breakdown. Hopefully, you will cash that ticket with an NC State team total under 68.5. And I will see you guys back here for some more gambling videos. Check out my other videos if you like this breakdown. And I've got some more best bets for the Final Four, including a great value bet on the most outstanding player of the tournament. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time.